The phone hadn't actually rung. I'm certain of that. I absent-mindedly picked up my phone and browsed through my notifications. Like most normal human beings in North America, I check my phone every 15 minutes for that little hit of dopamine that comes from seeing a new text or Snapchat notification. So, I was quite taken aback when I noticed a missed call from 20 minutes ago. My phone had been right in front of me on the table the entire time, and it usually blares an obnoxiously loud notification whenever something happens. The idea that I missed my ringtone, Natalie Imbruglia's Torn, don't judge, I chose it half ironically, was a real surprise. I checked the notification, assuming it was probably just spam, but I was surprised to see that the call had come from my local area code and that it had an actual name attached. Usually, when I get scam calls warning me that Interpol has me on a watch list and will lock me up, unless I pay $213 via some sketchy e-transfer, they're from a private number. But this time, there was a name. Diane Vale. It was likely still a spam call, but recently I'd been playing small gigs and opening for up-and-coming artists with my band, and I'd handed out my music business card, don't judge me, like candy. So, with a little spark of irrational excitement, I thought, what if? And decided to call back. After a few rings, someone answered. Hello? The voice on the other end sounded almost concerned. Curious. Was that an elderly woman? Hi, I replied weakly. I'm calling because I think I missed a call from this number, about 20 minutes ago. Oh, is that right? Wow, she began, her voice sounding weathered and raspy. Yep, definitely an elderly woman. I'm so sorry, I must have misdialed. Oh, I thought, all forgiven. Cell phones can be a lot, even for me sometimes. As tempting as it was to ask this woman about her experience with TikTok just to see if the question would short-circuit her brain, I decided it was best to end the call there. Ah, no worries at all. Hope you have a great day. Why, thank you, dear, she said. But before I could hit the bright red icon with the retro phone handle and sever all ties with this woman forever, she quickly added, I was trying to reach my husband, yes, that's what it was. He must have a number similar to yours. Oh, right, yeah, I figured you might have just been off by a digit or two. Happens all the time, I said, still eager to hang up. Yes, that must be it. I was trying to reach my husband, but I called you instead, which means I didn't reach my husband. Yes, exactly, you sweet, wonderful old lady. I think, therefore I am. You called me, so you didn't call your husband. Logic. I'll try him again now. Thank you for being so sweet and understanding, she continued. Again, no worries at all, I said, hastily hanging up to avoid any more mind-bending revelations, like, if I'm on the phone with you, I'm not on the phone with someone else right now. Whoa. Despite my sarcasm, I found the whole exchange rather endearing. That was the main thought in my mind anyway, when her name popped up on my caller ID a week later, accompanied by the sweet, sweet tunes of Natalie Imbruglia. Don't judge, the song's a banger. I decided to answer. Hello? I said. Diane took a moment to respond this time. When she finally did, she sounded almost surprised. Wait, you're not Martin? Nope, this must be a wrong number. The realization dawned on Diane slowly, like a glacier inching forward. Eventually, it clicked for her. Ah, you must be the same woman I called last time. Your voice is so clear. Yep, that's me again. Well, my goodness, you must be so annoyed that I accidentally called you again. Not at all, ma'am. You're fine. Good luck reaching your husband. Oh, well, it's not my husband this time, actually. It's my brother I'm trying to call. Got it. Well, good luck. I've got to run. I hung up just as she was mid-sentence. It felt a bit rude, but I knew I had to nip this in the bud before it dragged on. If someone on a cold call or in the street asks you for 20 seconds of your time, you have to be firm, say no, and move on. It's the foot in the door technique. You've got to squash it before they reel you in with boring stories. It wasn't until that evening that I realized how odd it was that she'd accidentally contacted me again, this time while trying to reach her brother. Did her husband, her brother, and I all have remarkably similar phone numbers? I brushed the thought away and moved on with my life. After 2 weeks with no more misdials, I assumed Diane had moved on as well. But as it turned out, the third time really was the charm. And this time, Diane's reappearance was nothing but frustrating. I was jolted awake at around 2 a.m. by the fading notes of my ringtone. "You're a little late. I'm already torn." I checked my phone just as it stopped ringing, and sure enough, it was Diane again. This time, however, it wasn't just a single missed call. She'd tried to reach me 20 times over the course of the last hour, and somehow, I'd slept through all of it. I blocked her number and went back to bed. The next morning, I noticed she'd left several voicemails. Out of morbid curiosity, I decided to listen to them, expecting a mundane series of updates about her day. Maybe an incident at the bank, a complaint about oranges being 20 cents more expensive at the supermarket, or frustration that her husband and brother still weren't picking up her calls. Instead, all I heard in each voicemail was her breathing. Just her breathing. One voicemail after another, each running for minutes before cutting out to the next. Occasionally, it seemed like her breathing would hitch, as though she was on the verge of crying, but she never did. What in the ever-loving hell? I couldn't decide if I should be creeped out or if I should feel bad for her. But, once again, I rationalized it. She was clearly terrible with technology, and "leave your message after the beep" probably meant nothing to her. Never mind that answering machines had been around long before voicemail, so she really would have had to have been living under a rock to be this clueless. Still, I clung to my half-baked explanation just to put the whole thing behind me. Thanks to blocking her number, life returned to normal over the next couple of months. Everything was back to business as usual. Sure, I'd get an uneasy feeling whenever I thought about Diane's late-night calls, but the day-to-day grind helped me push it to the back of my mind. Then, one day, at a completely ordinary time, my phone started ringing. I was expecting a call from a friend, so I instinctively reached for it. I nearly had a heart attack when I saw the name Diane Vale flash across the screen. My first thought was, how the hell did she manage to bypass the block? But then I noticed that the number looked completely different, definitely not from my local area code. She changed numbers to reach me? I answered the call. "I don't know what your problem is, but stop fucking calling me." "I'm completely alone," she interrupted. Her sudden statement threw me off. "I'm alone," she repeated. "I heard you. My husband, my brother, my family and friends, they've all passed. I have no one. I'm completely isolated. Look, I'm sorry to hear that really, but that doesn't excuse. I just need someone to talk to. Please. Just one meaningful conversation and then you won't hear from me again." God damn it. Okay, I sighed. As bizarre as this whole situation was, seriously, calling a stranger under the pretense of a wrong number just because you're lonely? If letting her vent about the heartbreak of growing old and losing everyone she cared about would help her find some peace, I could spare 10 minutes. Secretly, I was more annoyed at the idea that this woman might have kids, grandkids, or extended family who'd left her so isolated with no one to turn to. "Sometimes it feels like I've always been alone," she began. "And yet, I have memories of a time when life was full. There was company, laughter, liveliness. I can clearly remember moments when it felt like I had almost done too much socializing, where the presence of others was almost overwhelming, if you can believe it. You don't say? Ah, looking back, what a strange, foolish thought for me to have had," she mused, her voice drifting off. Deciding to multitask, I put her on speakerphone and started getting ready for a concert I had later that evening. I placed my phone on the bathroom countertop and began doing my makeup in front of the mirror. I'm sure reminiscing on the past brings up some mixed emotions. I'm sorry to hear that you're feeling so alone these days. No old friends or extended family left to talk to? I asked. Nope. Everyone I've been close to has passed away. Damn, that really does suck. I tried to shift the conversation in a more positive direction as I carefully applied eyeliner. This might sound like a strange question, but is there any chance you could try making new friends? Or maybe reach out to your kids or grandkids? I suggested. I've tried with my kids, she replied. No luck. They never answer. That's a shame, I said. But about making new friends, absolutely. I'd love to make some new friends. That's good, I replied. But as I spoke, an uneasy feeling crept up my spine. It was as if some inner barrier had been breached, a hard-to-describe sensation that left me unsettled. I hope you can find a way to feel empowered, I continued, shaking off the weird feeling. To make new friends and get everything you can out of life. You should never give up on finding fulfillment, even when things seem bleak. I was really pulling out all the platitudes today. Never, never, ever. I've always been persistent. I've never been one to give up on having and maintaining a wonderful life. Not in a million years, she responded with an eerie conviction. I tried to stay focused on her words, but something strange kept distracting me. In the mirror, I noticed my free hand was slowly caressing my hair in an unfamiliar, almost eerie way. Why am I doing that? I quickly pulled my hand back to its usual resting position and returned to applying concealer under my eyes. But every time I feel hopeful, I sink into sadness again. It's truly the worst thing to lose your family, she lamented. I'm really sorry to hear that, I said, genuinely feeling for her. It was a brutal accident. We were all in the car. My brother was driving. He had a brief moment of negligence. He got distracted in conversation and looked away from the road. At the same time, another driver made a reckless mistake. It was a perfect accident. Almost like the opposite of serendipity. Two momentary lapses creating a terrible cosmic mistake. I found myself caressing my cheek. Wait, why was I doing that? Yes, my skin is nice, but I don't normally feel the urge to touch it like this. Once again, I forced my hand back to its resting position. That's really messed up. I'm truly sorry about that. So just to be clear, that accident is how you lost your brother? I asked. Everyone. My brother was driving. His wife was in the passenger seat, and in the back, it was myself, my husband, and my sister. Jesus, that's fucking brutal, excuse my language. I genuinely can't imagine how hard it must be to survive something like that, and then have to go on without the people closest to you, I said, my voice softening with empathy. There was silence on the other end, just the sound of her breathing. It must have been hard for her to relive those memories. I could sense we were diving too deep, and I started thinking of ways to gracefully end the conversation. I wasn't even sure if talking about all this was helping her. It's a void, she finally said. Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, I've lost people close to me too, and it definitely feels like there's a hole in your... Where you end up when it all ends is a void. It's not at all what people said it would be. What? My involuntary movements were really starting to freak me out now. 1 minute I was standing upright, applying lipstick, and the next, I was hunched over the sink, my face almost pressed against the mirror, staring deeply into my own eyes. It was time to end this call. I'm really sorry to hear that, and I can't imagine how hard it's been for you. I hope you can find some peace, but I need to go now, if that's okay? You know, she continued, ignoring me. When the crash happened, even though I felt my skull crack, my spine snap, and blood fill my mouth, choking me as the rest of my body was a mangled mess, it still felt like I was alive for much longer than I should have been. It hurt for a really long time. And that's it. I'm out. I could feel something moving inside me, something not entirely under my control. I was pushing my hair back, but it wasn't me doing it. But then I thought when I finally crossed over that I'd be reunited with everyone, that we'd all be together. But it wasn't true. It's just a void, a sea of darkness. And it's lonely and horrifying, yet paired with a strange vigor. a desperate desire to return to life. I went to hang up the phone. Why were my hands suddenly clasped together, refusing to move? "Easy now, I can feel you. Stay on just a little while longer, I'm almost there," she said. Oh, hell no. I'm ready to move on from this. I'm ready to start a new life, make new friends again, walk down the street and hear the noise of cars and casual conversations. Company. Why do I feel like I'm about to pass out? Why does it feel like something is blooming inside me, something that shouldn't be there? I'm so thrilled you kept answering because I swear this has all happened for a reason. I'm almost there, almost completely inside of you. You're so beautiful and young, and I can vividly imagine all the new friends I'm going to make, the memories I'll create, just the liveliness of it all. Everything, even the pain, means something. I'm utterly convinced of that. Her voice sped up, growing more intense, echoing inside my head. I tried to unclasp my hands, to hang up the call, but my body wouldn't respond. Stay on just a little longer, dear, I'm almost there, and I feel myself taking over out his wonderful feeling. Through clenched teeth, as the world around me began to blur, I growled, "Get the fuck away from my body." A deep, primal instinct told me I had seconds before I lost myself completely. Desperate, I did the only thing I could think of. I smashed my head against the bathroom mirror, shattering it. But the grip she had on me didn't falter. My hands remained clenched, as though her spirit was physically entwined with mine. I braced myself and slammed my head against the wall. And again, and again. Her voice, still croaking through the phone, pushed me to the brink. With a final, desperate surge of energy, I wound up and smashed my head as hard as I could against the bathroom counter. The pain was excruciating. I was terrified I might have done irreversible damage to my skull, but I didn't care. I would rather die than let anyone else take control of my body. I felt her influence wane, just a little, as her voice seeped through the call, now tinged with desperation. "You're a vessel," she cried. "Why can't you be grateful for that?" I was teetering on the edge of unconsciousness, unsure whether it was from the head trauma or if my spirit was slipping away. Summoning every last ounce of strength, I stood up and brought my head down like a hammer onto the counter where the phone lay, knocking both the phone and myself to the floor. In the midst of the agonizing pain and disorientation, I felt a brief, glorious sense of freedom. I seized that fleeting moment of clarity, driven by a surge of adrenaline, and crawled over to the phone. My hands trembled as I frantically tapped through the screens and notifications. Just as I heard Diane's voice begin to speak again, I hung up. Jesus. Fucking Christ. It's finally over. I lay on the bathroom floor, screaming out the pent-up fear and rage until my throat was raw. But then my relief turned to horror as I heard my Natalie Imbruglia ringtone play again, signaling another incoming call. Caller ID, Diane Vale. I ended the call immediately, but before I could even catch my breath, another call came in. Then another. Diane was calling from different numbers, relentlessly, each call cutting off the last before I could hang up. Panic surged through me. I scrambled to the hallway closet, grabbed my toolbox, and pulled out a hammer. Without hesitation, I ran back to the bathroom and smashed my Samsung Galaxy S23 into oblivion. Even after the phone was nothing but shattered glass and twisted metal, I kept pounding the hammer into the floor, venting every ounce of frustration, fear, and fury that had built up inside me. Finally, I was done. Slowly, I stood up, glancing at the broken mirror. I could only imagine how battered and bruised my face must look. As the adrenaline wore off, the full weight of the pain hit me like a ton of bricks. Like Diane had said, it hurt for a long time. But I was still here. And now, it was time to go to the hospital. No concert tonight, that was for sure. I'd deal with explaining all this madness to the cops later. It took a long time before I felt comfortable getting a new phone. Even now, I can still remember the nausea that hit me like a wave months later when her name popped up on caller ID again, this time accompanied by my new ringtone, Electric Light Orchestra's Evil Woman. I blocked it, just as I did with every other number permutation she used to call me in the following months. The eerie, skin-crawling sensation that accompanied each of Diane's attempts to reach me never really faded. But thankfully, as time went on, her calls became less frequent, more sporadic. Maybe she was finally starting to make peace with the void. Or maybe she was just using that extra time to figure out how to text from the afterlife. A few weeks ago, I got my first texts from her. "You were so unbelievably selfish. To string me along, give me false hope, and then back out at the last moment. I have a silent prayer that I'm holding deep in my heart, that when you do pass, you'll be in the same void I am. I'll have an eternity to inflict on you what I dream about in every waking moment. Diane." Sigh. Not even an XOX or a till. She could really use a crash course in texting etiquette. At the time, I laughed it off. It was absurd. Lady, if we all end up in a void, and you've been stuck in that void alone for what feels like an eternity, it's probably safe to assume it's a massive fucking void where you'll never find me. That's the comforting thought I cling to. But I'd be lying if I said there weren't moments when despair creeps in. Particularly on those mornings when I wake up after a nightmare. All of my nightmares have taken on a similar, unnerving pattern. I'll be having a regular, mundane dream, and then suddenly, I'll turn a corner, and off in the distance, the dreamscape fades into a black void. Standing at the edge of that void, where the darkness meets the normal dream surroundings, is Diane. She's staring at me with that intense gaze, a subtle smile on her lips, and she's waving. And in that moment, it all feels disturbingly real, far too vivid to be just a dream. What I hate most about these nightmares is how my body sometimes betrays me. Every now and then, without thinking, I'll find myself waving back. I wonder if we're allowed to bring things with us into the afterlife. If so, I might just ask my loved ones to bury me with a hammer.